On today's show, the July moratorium is over, and Kevin Durant, Clint Capella, and Dorian Finney-Smith are all now officially members of your Houston Rockets. Rafael Stone addressed the media and gave his thoughts on the Kevin Durant trade, as well as a variety of other topics. Why the Dorian Finney-Smith deal is such a win for Houston, and when can we expect to hear from Kevin Durant himself? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just head on over to FanDuel.com to check them out. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. The moratorium is over, and the Rockets look like a completely different team. Now, these are all... We knew the KD trade was happening. We knew the Capella trade and the DFS signing. It's how the July moratorium works. The deals can't become official until the moratorium is over. And that's what happened Sunday afternoon. Deals officially come in. We get some specifics on the contracts and the terms and the historic 7-team trade that the Rockets were involved in to get Kevin Durant. It was basically still just the exact same trade that we thought it was before between the Rockets and Suns. There weren't any crazy moving parts floating around. On today's show, we will be taking a look at some of the details that we know now that the deals are official. We'll take a quick look at the intricacies of the Dorian Finney-Smith contract, which is a gigantic win for the Rockets with how they structured it. We'll also hear from Rafael Stone in his post-Kevin Durant trade media availability, not an official press conference, but his first time talking to the media after the trade became official. We'll run that segment. We'll run that clip back. The entire clip is about 10 minutes long in segment 2. And then I've got some thoughts to share on a couple of the different things that he said to the media in his availability. We'll talk about that stuff in segment 3. But here from the jump, a few things that I want to discuss to start the show before we get into Stone's media availability. First and foremost, Kevin Durant, Clint Capella, DFS, they are all officially members of the Houston Rockets. A lot of Rockets fans are wondering, will we get an introductory press conference with Kevin Durant? And at least my understanding of the situation as it currently exists is that KD, being the star that he is, has a lot of, prior commitments, a lot of other obligations this summer. And it has made things difficult timing-wise to try and figure out if the Rockets are going to be able to have like a, full, dog and pony show with, KD in Houston and an intro presser like they did for Dwight Howard or for Chris Paul and all that kind of stuff like you do when you get, a star acquisition. If they are able to pull something off, it'll likely be sometime after Summer League. Definitely won't be before Summer League, so don't get your hopes up that we'll hear from KD anytime soon. But the more than likely outcome is that it would be pushed off until I heard maybe late August or early September. And because that kind of directly coincides with, it's pretty much, not far off the, not far away from media day. If they weren't able to get something done until August or September in the first place, I could very realistically see them just rolling everything into media day. And so as unfortunate as it is, we might not hear from Kevin Durant in any official capacity as an official member of the Houston Rockets until media day. Now, there is the off chance that we will hear from him at NBA Summer League. Oftentimes, current NBA players pull up to support their team, to hang out, to get to know their teammates, that kind of stuff. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for Kevin Durant to attend Summer League, and he might speak in either an official or even slightly unofficial capacity while he's there. I actually won't be attending Summer League. This is my first time in 4 years not going to Summer League to cover the Houston Rockets. They didn't add a new draft pick. Reed Sheppard's going to play 2 games and then get benched. It wasn't in the cards for me this year, so I unfortunately won't be there. But if KD is made available in any official capacity through the Houston Rockets, the media members that are there, Daniel Lerner, Kelly Iko, people like that will have the story and be able to interview him and ask questions. So that might be the first time that we hear from KD. Anyways, so it's disappointing because you get a star player. You want to ask him some questions, have him address the fans. What can we expect out of you? That kind of stuff. Anyways, the other bit of KD-centric news is there was speculation on what jersey he would be rocking with the Houston Rockets. And his agent and business partner, Rich Kleiman, teased through his Instagram story that it looks like KD will likely be rocking number 7 in Houston. So he wore 7 in Brooklyn. He has been 35 everywhere else in his career. So this is only the second iteration of KD number 7. In addition to that, Dorian Finney-Smith will be rocking number 2, and Clint Capella will be rocking jersey number 21 because Reed Sheppard took Clint's previous number of 15 back when Clint was here for his first go around with the Rockets. So just wanted to kind of address those points really quickly off the top. And then this is a big one, and I probably should spend more time on it, but I just want to hit it very quickly. Now that all the signings have been made official and officially reported to the league office, we get some terms on these contracts. And the Dorian Finney-Smith contract that the Rockets signed was an absolute masterclass by Rafael Stone. The third and fourth years of the contract are non-guaranteed. So it was originally reported as a 4-year, $53 million deal with a player option in the final year of the contract. Then we find out that the final year of the deal, the player option year, is a non-guaranteed year. And the third year is also a non-guaranteed year. So what that effectively means, to boil it down into the simplest terms possible, the Rockets basically got Dorian Finney-Smith on a 2-year, $25 million deal. And then they can just decide if they want to move on from DFS at the end of that contract before years 3 or 4 kick in. And so now the Rockets have a lot of payroll synergy here where they've got Dorian Finney-Smith, Fred VanVleet, all on these 2-year deals. And that means that when the Rockets' money, when their salary cap situation is going to get really tight further down the line, also pending, Kevin Durant extension, what that looks like. Maybe he signs a 1+1 deal, so he'd be on the books for 2 more years as well. It gives the Rockets a lot of financial flexibility down the line for when you have eventually, right, the extensions kicking in for Jabari Smith Jr. and hopefully Tari Eason, and then even further down the line, Thompson. And so it's very clearly giving the Rockets this, like, they've got a clear 2-year window that they are prioritizing. When you look at the contracts of Fred VanVleet, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Kevin Durant, and all this stuff. So just a really fantastic job by Rafael Stone, effectively replacing what was left of Dylan Brooks' contract on a cheaper scale, because DB was making about $20 million a year and had 2 more years left on his deal. Now Dorian Finney-Smith is making $12 million a year for only 2 more years before the Rockets can decide to effectively move on from him or package him a trade or do whatever they need to do to be able to juggle whatever cap gymnastics they've got to figure out down the line to keep paying all the young guys that they still have on the roster. So with that, coming up, want to run back the media availability for general manager Rafael Stone, what he had to say in the aftermath of the Kevin Durant trade. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? FanDuel has so many different ways for you to get engaged and have some fun with it. They've got their parlay builder that you can check out. You can make different prop bets along the way, or you can just take a look at some of the simple bets like the outright favorites to win the World Series this year. Right now, the LA Dodgers plus 210, the Detroit Tigers behind them at plus 750. You got your Houston Astros and Philadelphia Phillies both at plus 850, and rounding up the top 5, the New York Yankees at plus 900. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's go ahead and dive into General Manager Rafael Stone's media availability, addressing the Kevin Durant trade and the other roster moves, Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, Cam Whitmore departing, the signings of Dorian Finney-Smith, and the other trade for Clint Capella, all that good stuff. We'll hear what Stone has to say, and then I'll tackle it with some thoughts in our third and final segment. Let's go ahead and run it back right now.
Go ahead. Well, you guys obviously got a lot older this summer, and 10 of the draft picks you took between 2021 and 24, 5 of those guys are now gone. How would you assess how you and your staff have been able to evaluate and develop the young draft picks, and do you see that shift towards experience going beyond this season?
To the very last question, I have no idea. We're worried about this season. In terms of just developing guys, I think we're not a developmental team anymore. That shift probably happened a year or two ago, and I think the goal for this group is to win basketball games and be as competitive as we can be.
What was the biggest factor that made you guys want to acquire Kevin Durant?
I mean, he's Kevin Durant. I think he's really good. He's super efficient. He had a great year last year, so I mean, he's obviously not 30 anymore, but he hasn't really fallen off, and we just think, we think he has a chance to really be impactful for us.
Rafael, what do you hope the young guys learn from Kevin Durant and can take from him as they're around him?
Yeah, we actually arranged for a bunch of those guys to work out with him last summer and the summer before. His work ethic is just awesome. Like the speed at which he goes. Not in a game. I mean, obviously everyone tries hard in games, but the speed at which he practices and kind of the intensity at which he practices is something that has made him great over the years. And it started when he was very young. And so of all the things that I hope rubs off, that's the main one. I think that practice makes perfect. And I think one of the reasons he's had such an excellent career is because of the intensity with which he works day in, day out.
Ime and KD's kind of relationship is pretty well documented. How much was Ime a push for this trade, and what was his reaction when this trade went through? I mean,
I think organizationally we only do things when it makes sense for all of us, and so he was definitely an advocate for it, but only in this way. That by no means was there pressure to do something like this. We thought we were going to be a very good team coming back no matter what. And when the deal came through in this manner, I think we all wanted to do it.
What does Kevin bring that this team didn't have last season?
I mean, he has an easy time getting his own shot in the half court. He's hyper efficient, or has been hyper efficient in the half court, and honestly, that's what he brings to every team. So no team that doesn't have Kevin has his unique skill set. So he'll bring that here. There'll be for sure things we give up, but we like the trade-off.
How much do you think the Rockets' timeline to contend for a championship is kind of the same as Kevin's timeline of being in Houston?
We were the number 2 seed last year, and I think a very legitimate one. And so we think we can contend now. And we thought we won a close series. I mean, no, not one. We lost a close series last year. And we thought we had a real chance of contending in the playoffs last year. And we hope to have a real chance of contending in the playoffs this year.
Was it a difficult decision to move on from Jalen Green?
Yeah, like Jalen's awesome. He did everything we asked. He's a wonderful combination of talent and work ethic, along with being just a great human being. And any time that you have the privilege to work with someone who is talented and works really hard and is really nice, you should value it. And so organizationally, we've valued him tremendously. So yeah, very hard.
During the draft, what was the thought process in moving on from him?
I mean, it's the NBA, and you can only do trades if a certain amount of money goes out and a certain amount comes in, and there's some positional overlap, or at least overlap in terms of on-ball presence, and so that's what the deal required.
During the draft, Cam Whitmore was able to fall to you all at 20, and you at the draft, like you said, that he was very good talent, should have been a top 5 talent. What went into the decision to move on from him?
I just think, we're just not a developmental team right now. It's really like we wanted to provide Cam with the opportunity to do in his career what we still believe he very much can do. So I think Cam's insanely talented, really nice young man, and wanted to provide him an opportunity to go home and be in a situation where he could really play through mistakes in a way that we never could afford him just in the iteration of the Rockets that he joined.
Were there more offers for him as well?
Excuse me?
Were there more offers for you all?
There's a lot of interest in Cam.
Do you feel like this roster is augmented well to kind of supplement Kevin's strengths and protect him at year 30 or year 19, age 37?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, but everything has to play out. But we like the fit. We think it works well. We think he will add to us, and we think we will help him.
Rafael, you said he's not 30 anymore. He's obviously going to be 37 in September. What allowances will you guys make, understanding the training spectacular? His production has not tailed off, but he did play 62 games, I believe, last year.
I mean, he'll play when he can play, and we have what, again, is just on paper, but on paper is a very deep roster, and when he's not able to play, other guys will step up.
Would you like to add to your guard depth, or do you feel confident going into next season with your current backcourt?
I mean, I like our team as is. We always look for opportunities to do various things, but we're hard capped at the first apron, and we have no space left. So I think very likely we'll enter the season with, looking very similar to the way we look at right now. It's pretty hard not to.
Where do you hope to see Reed Sheppard grow in his role next season?
I mean, Reed's just going to have to be really good for us, period.
What have your initial conversations with Kevin been like, and what do you think attracted him to this situation?
I mean, I think he liked our team. Lots of people liked our team. We were a very young, very, very good team last year. So I assume that's the obvious and what attracted him. In terms of my initial conversations, he's been great. Super excited to be here, excited to get started, excited to get to know the young guys, just be a part of it all. Sounds wonderful. But it's July. That's every hope springs eternal. So we for all of us, we're going to have to put in the work and earn everything we get.
The Clint Capella signing, does that sort of signal a willingness to go more double big next year?
For sure. We love that lineup. Once we discovered it last year, we thought it was really, really effective for us. Also, Clint just adds something we don't have in terms of being kind of a center who can move a little bit easier on the perimeter, also as a lob threat. Finally, we just think depth is super important, and as we're trying to make it through the season, we don't want there to be huge drop-off. So we did not anticipate going into free agency that we would be able to get Clint, but we're ecstatic when that materialized.
It hasn't been announced yet, but do you mind if I ask you about Jabari? Just extending him and that decision?
No, I mean, we're super happy to extend Jabari. He's an enormous part of what we're doing, what we did last year, what we did the year before, and the year before that, and what we think our future is. So Jabari is super important to us.
How much of moving man back to his natural position of guard went into also being able to bring in Kevin Durant?
Yeah, I mean, Amen makes a lot of what we do possible, because you can just kind of decide that today's a point guard, tomorrow's an off guard, then he'd be a power forward. We played him at center. That's one of the great things about Amen and his particular skill set is that it allows you to slot other players in very easily.
I know he'll probably bring a lot, but what is the biggest thing you hope that Kevin Durant will add to your team or bring to your team?
I mean, I think he's offensively, he's still dynamic. He's super efficient. He's a high volume scorer, at that high level of efficiency. And hopefully he just makes us a better offensive team while at the same time being another really long, very capable wing defender. And so, so we just hope he adds him, the player that he's been for the last 2 decades almost.
You said this is no longer a developmental team. Do you feel like the championship window has opened up for you all, especially with acquiring Kevin Durant?
I mean, our goal is definitely to win a championship. I don't know about the window opening or closing or whatever else. In order to be a champion, you have to beat them. Oklahoma City had just an amazing year last year, an amazing run in the playoffs. That's an extremely high bar, and there's other really great teams all around the NBA. So I think it's way too early to talk about championships other than for obvious reasons, that's our goal.
What were some of the factors that went in? What were some of the factors that went into signing Dorian Finney-Smith as opposed to some of the other available free agents this offseason?
I mean, we felt like we really wanted Dylan. Well, I talked earlier about Jalen, but Dylan, was everything we could have asked in terms of being a great person on and off the court, and we felt like his defense and intensity were things were really important to us, and we uniquely thought Dorian has some of those same traits, and so he was a target for us going in because we were worried about losing.
Is how this team matches up against Oklahoma City something you guys thought about more so than all the other 28 teams, perhaps?
No, I think we're just trying to put together the best team we can.
We talked a lot about go ahead.
How about just an added bonus to seemingly be able to improve the three-point shooting?
With Dorian or Kevin or just in general?
All these.
I mean, we were really good at getting our misses. It would be better if they went in the first time, but we just want to score. We want to be as good offensively as we can. We don't really care how. Having said that, no one turns down shooting.
We talked a lot about the players, but what did it mean to bring DJ Augustine into the organization?
DJ's my guy. I'm very happy to have him in our front office.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That does it for Rafael Stone's media availability. Coming up, Rafael says the Rockets are not a developmental team anymore. What does that mean for the young guys, as well as the pressure on Reed Sheppard next season? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Really quickly, before I get into the thoughts that I have about what Rafael Stone shared with us during his media availability, the Rockets did formally announce their Summer League roster. They're always one of the last teams in the NBA to do so. I don't know why they keep it so secret. Yes, Reed Sheppard is playing in Summer League, and we'll do a minor Summer League preview at some point later on this week. So we'll talk about that. Both Reed Sheppard and Rockets assistant coach Garrett Jackson spoke as well. Garrett Jackson will be the head coach of the Summer League roster. So some stuff to look forward to there. We'll revisit that in a future episode. But let's start with a few of the points that Rafael Stone made that seem to be, making the rounds amongst Rockets fans on social media. So the first big one, when asked about, what went into the Cam Whitmore trade, the decision to move on, right? Stone's answer of, we are not a developmental team anymore. And there's really nothing wrong with that answer. The Rockets aren't a developmental team anymore. But what that answer doesn't say is it doesn't say we are not in the process of developing the young talent we have. There's a difference between taking a young player like a Cam Whitmore, who is still incredibly rough around the edges, or for example, had they not made the KD trade, drafting with that 10th overall pick and adding another fresh-faced rookie to the mix and trying to develop those types of talents. It's very different trying to develop and find time for development for guys like that, as opposed to the somewhat more proven talents that they do have on the roster. The exception to which being Reed Sheppard, who is not really a proven talent, although internally the Rockets organization is so high on Reed and they wanted him number 3 overall for a reason. And even though he didn't have a substantial role on this team as a rookie, they're incredibly optimistic about the role that he will have moving forward. And he's going to need to have a big role moving forward, right? They're putting a lot of confidence in him as the backup guard behind Fred VanVleet going into just year 2 of his career. But this idea that Stone saying we are not a developmental team anymore means that Ime Udoka is not still trying to develop and grow and nurture Alperen Sengun or Amin Thompson or Jabari and Tari or Reed Sheppard, these remaining members of the Rockets' young core, is kind of a ridiculous sentiment, right? Players are constantly growing and changing and developing and getting better and improving their games. It's just that all the young talent that the Rockets have right now, with the exception to a lesser degree of Reed Sheppard, is proven talent. We know what Jabari and Tari are capable of. We know that Amin Thompson and Alperen Sengun are both on star-level trajectories in their NBA careers. Ime Udoka and his coaching staff will absolutely continue to refine and develop that talent. They just don't have time to bring rookies into the mix, or, first and second year players who don't really have, a kind of established role or a baseline of who they can be and who they are as players on the floor. There's not really enough time to commit to ironing out those kinks, ironing out, those issues, and really refining a player and making them the best version of themselves. And that's ultimately why Cam Whitmore was moved on to Washington, right? And part of that is, Cam had some time to work on those issues, right? He had 2 years. And even though he didn't really get like a super duper extended stretch in the rotation, which I still maintain was a misstep by the Rockets coaching staff and their kind of developmental plan for Cam, regardless of what was going on behind the scenes, given his talent level, Cam did have opportunities to prove that he was worthy of rotation minutes and just couldn't ever get the necessary buy-in from him. But you know who they haven't had issues with buy-in from? Reed Sheppard. He got a chance as a rookie, lost his spot in the rotation, kept doing all the work behind the scenes, kept working on his game, refining it, getting better, working closely with the coaching staff. And now they're in a position where he's headed back for Summer League Part 2. And hopefully he looks like the best player on the floor in the, however many Summer League games he ultimately plays, because he's going to have a really big role on the team this next season. And speaking of that really big role for Reed Sheppard, one of the questions Stone was asked, right, where do you hope to see Reed's growth? And point blank, Stone said, Reed is just going to have to be really good for us, period. That was it. No elaboration, no added anything. Just Reed is going to have to be really good for us. And some Rockets fans are still concerned, right, about putting all those eggs in the Reed Sheppard basket. I wouldn't say, again, necessarily that they're all in the Reed Sheppard basket, because, again, he's your third ball handler behind Fred VanVleet and Amin Thompson. And, again, I think Amin Thompson projects to have a substantially larger role as an on-ball presence this upcoming season with the removal of Jalen Green and with how many more on-ball reps we saw Amin Thompson getting as last season progressed. That certainly seems to be a direction that the Rockets are going. We're certainly going to see a lot of the Amin Thompson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Tari, Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Kevin Durant lineup. Like, that 5-man lineup is going to be featured, I think, pretty heavily, with Amin Thompson running that point guard position full time with no Fred VanVleet or Reed Sheppard on the floor. And so Reed's role, he is going to have to be good for this team, but he's only going to have to do it in these, 12 to 15 minute spurts, maybe slightly more than that if he's really on fire one night. But I think there's enough there, and we saw enough in some of those brief glimpses as the season progressed and as Reed became more comfortable with the speed of the NBA game, understanding how he can be impactful defensively, understanding how to pick and choose his spots on offense, choosing when to hunt his own shot versus facilitating for a teammate. These are all things that are going to be a lot easier for Reed Sheppard going into year 2. Point guard is the hardest position on the floor to play at the NBA level, trying to quarterback an entire offense, trying to be, the point of attack for the a POA defender defensively, and being, one of the smallest, if not oftentimes the smallest guy on the floor for Reed, right? He was picked on at times defensively, and that's going to be something he has to adjust to or continue to adjust to in his NBA career. But again, the Rockets are very high on Reed Sheppard and what he'll bring to the table next season. And they should be, right? He was a number 3 overall pick for a reason. And hopefully he does, a couple crazy games at Summer League and shuts up all the doubters. The other part that Rafael Stone addressed very briefly was when he was asked about guard depth. He went on to say that we very likely we enter the season looking very similar to. Thank goodness for that mute button, so y'all don't have to hear me sneeze on the podcast. But pardon me, Stone did say about the possibility of adding an additional guard. He said, very likely we enter the season looking very similarly to how we look right now. He mentioned being hard capped at the first apron. That is true. Again, we've addressed it here on this show, though. If the Rockets had an opportunity to add somebody that they felt impacted the roster, if they felt the need to add another perimeter player, another ball handler, maybe to help offset how young and inexperienced Reed Sheppard is, if things maybe don't pan out with Reed Sheppard the way they want them to this upcoming season, the Rockets are more than capable of waiving Nate Williams because of his non-guaranteed salary, which gives them about $3.5 million to work with before they hit that first apron hard cap, which is more than enough room for them to go sign somebody on a 1-year vet minimum deal, or even absorbing a player on a, about $3.5 million or less contract just outright into their cap space. I believe they would be able to figure that out. Actually, let me take that back a little bit. They would have to absorb the player into a traded player exception, which I believe they generated through the Cam Whitmore trade, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, the Rockets have avenues to improve the roster if they deem necessary. But to Stone's point, this is likely going to be the roster that we see going into training camp, going into opening night, all that good stuff. So I would not be expecting the Rockets to make another substantial move or even another minor addition somewhere down the line. Now, maybe something crazy opens up. Maybe Damian Lillard comes knocking on Houston's door and he's like, hey, I saw that Steven Adams rehabbed while, a member of your team, and I'd love to come by. Can you guys sign me to a super cheap 2-year deal? Maybe that's an avenue that they're willing to go. Who knows? Ultimately, though, the Rockets roster is largely set. Very curious your thoughts on what Rafael Stone had to say addressing the media in the aftermath of the Kevin Durant trade. Curious your thoughts on the different signings, the Dorian Finney-Smith deal, the Clint Capella addition. Give me all your thoughts about what Stone had to say in the YouTube comments, but that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.